Welcome to the Leveraged and Loving It podcast, business advice for coaches and thought leaders. And now your host, Renee Hasseldine.
Welcome back to another episode of Leveraged and Loving It. On today's episode, we're joined by the fabulous Raquel Dubois, who works with heart-centered entrepreneurs to expand their capacity, find that missing piece so that they can actually have more, be more, do more, and have infinite possibilities in their life and in their business. And Raquel is my go-to person whenever I'm experiencing a stumbling block in my own business or personal life. And I highly recommend her. She's fabulous, and I'm so excited to have her on the show today. Welcome back to the show, Raquel. So great to have you here.
Oh, thank you, Renee. I'm really excited about being here again.
I know. I was just thinking, like, I've had Raquel on the show before. You're coming back. You're a repeat offender.
Yes.
I didn't scare you
great
away.
delight.
Awesome. Well, you know how we roll. So I was just sort of saying in the intro that you are my go-to person when I'm, in this self-sabotage or when things are sort of starting to contract and whatever. And we've actually built into the system, now a quarterly session to make sure that I get in with you and sort shit out and expand my capacity before I start experiencing the contraction and all the shit hitting the fan. Yeah. So it's kind of like we're now at the point where we can use it as a preventative rather than let's try and band-aid something. Not that it was ever a band-aid, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Rather than medicine, we're looking at prevention now. So which is kind of cool. So share with us a little bit about what do you mean by expanding capacity and infinite possibilities? What does that mean for a business owner?
Yeah. So for a business owner, the idea of having a greater capacity means that you can do stuff without feeling challenged by your nervous system or your competing demands. Okay, because ultimately that's what's happening at a nervous system level. You're getting competing demands. It's like, family, kids, partner, business, marketing, like all of the different buckets, and pockets and pails or whatever you're using to think about all the different things you're juggling, and I'm a solopreneur as well, and there are just too many things that I'm juggling. But with the expanded capacity, it doesn't mean that, I'm superwoman. It's not about bringing that kind of mentality in of like, I can do everything, but it's about bringing in the mentality of, I can monitor my capacity and I can grow my capacity to actually stretch it within a great deal of comfort so that I'm still actually not stressed when I'm dealing with my family especially, or my children, or my colleagues, or my clients, when I need to actually be, a container for them. Yeah. So, I think we've all probably had crazy bosses. I certainly have, that really made a whole show about being super stressed, right? And
I would never glorify being busy and stressed. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I certainly in my life, I worked in consulting firms and various other different, and in marketing and recruitment agencies, and in sales, and I've seen how people, make that, they really glorify their stress, right? I mean, we even do that to little ways, Me and my brother have this kind of thing of like, we're too busy to see each other all the time, right?
Well, so that's because you're very important.
Yes, that's right, because we're super important, so we can't possibly make time for each other, right? So what we're trying to actually do, though, through expanding our capacity, is that sort of stuff we get more choice, really. I think that's what I want to say, is that we actually get loads of choice then about how we spend our time. And we don't get that, I'm too busy excuse thing going on. We get the, no, I'm choosing to not do that, or I'm choosing to do that, and I'm choosing to make time for that. And it doesn't feel arduous and a chore because the capacity is there. You don't have to overstretch yourself to do something you really want to do.
Yes. Yeah. And just to sort of give you a bit of an example of, me as a case study as well, is that, for example, there'd be times when I was doing national tours where I'd be mid-tour and making zero sales, just tanking my sales and just thinking, what is going on? And knowing that the only thing that was different, between this tour and the last is me, and going, what am I doing? I know I'm sabotaging. I don't know what's going on, but I'm bumming out and something's just, there's a missing piece. What is it? Have a session with Raquel, turn around and do $70,000 in sales the next week. Like that's, it's that sort of stuff, when you know that you're following all the right, even if you're not following the right stuff in strategies in your business, the thing stopping you from actually doing what you need to do can be yourself. And,
Yes.
but until, it's just like, for me, it really is that missing piece, Raquel. It's like the, it's so hard to articulate, which is why I'm so glad we now have the signature system, because Raquel worked with me in June on Authority Accelerator, and we've extracted the signature system. We've now got some language around this that we can actually use to explain what happens, which I'm so excited about, because now I understand the process more, and it's very exciting. And because a lot of what you've done in the past has been working one-on-one. So I'd like to kind of understand a bit. You've been working one-on-one with your clients very successfully and fully booked and maxed out, very successful business. And a lot of the stuff that you work on, I think a lot of our clients would kind of resonate with this, is that it is quite bespoke and customized because it's unique and you're dealing with a person's nervous system. So talk a little bit about the transition for you from working one-on-one to now, because now you're offering group programs, which is very exciting. And I think, that's a great thing for the audience to understand, is that transition of working one-on-one on something so personal to working in a group environment, and what that's looking like for you.
Yeah. So I think I did have to kind of tweak my objectives very specifically, in that I'm no longer specifically working on individual trauma in the group context. Okay. Yes. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, that individual trauma doesn't come up, and we would then address it. Right. So it's I think one of the key things in my group processes is that everything is in the container, and that means everything is met and received and is can be with. Okay, so we all actually are with whatever comes into the container, into the group container. So if individual trauma were to come up, and in some cases, people have had some kind of personal crises, and the group container holds that, right?
Yeah.
But we're not specifically going into personal trauma. That's not specifically what we're going for. We are, however, building containers. So we're building, for example, I offer the learning container. I offer the course container. I offer myself as a container, right? So there's a few containers that I offer, and then others come in, and we're building the collective container, the group container of the people that are coming in. And they are bringing in their personal container, and that's where I start to teach people how to become aware of their own container and containers in general. It's kind of like a Russian dolls, if you think about the Russian dolls, and really we're just expanding out our awareness of containers. And through that, we actually start to tap into collective energy. And because I hold and work with transforming trauma energies and collective trauma and ancestral and intergenerational trauma, that's kind of what we start to hold as a group. So we don't focus on collective trauma, because really it's our individual experience of our collective trauma that's the issue, right? We don't come usually into a situation where we say, I've got this collective trauma that's where the problem is. Most of the time we're aware that the issue is something, on an individual level. However, it's actually has its origins in that collective trauma. What I find is that us working in a group situation, we can actually transform collective trauma more quickly and more effectively than if we try to transform group and intergenerational trauma in individual sessions.
That's amazing.
So that's why I love it. Yeah.
And it's so exciting, and I think it's reassuring for people as well who are kind of at the stage where they are maxed out one-on-one and are thinking, but how could I possibly do this as a group? It's so personal. You're proof that it can be done, and that actually it can be even more effective.
Yes.
and it is, yeah, about that space that you hold as the facilitator. And that's really, you know, it's a really exciting and fantastic thing to hear. So I'd like to, can you give us sort of some examples of, like, you know, what are the reasons that people start to, I'm actually curious to know, actually, from the people who are coming to you for one-on-one and the people that are coming to work with you in the group program, are they coming to you with different motivators, different problems? Talk to us a little bit about if that's shifted at all. Is the ideal client the same or different?
It's a little bit different in that because there's a quality of teaching component in the group program that is more thorough than what I would do in the individual session.
Yes.
And what I'm actually offering in the course, tweaking it to whoever shows up, but I'm offering the opportunity for people to take away some understanding of the nervous system that they could apply then in their work.
Yeah.
Okay, with clients. So they can go quite deeply with it into the nervous system with themselves. However, they can also take that forward. And whilst they're on this level of the training, and I'm actually going to create a new training next year, but on this level of the training, it's kind of like the container building and all the foundational work about how it feels to be in our nervous system and why it feels that way before I start actually teaching ways to intervene with the nervous system. Because a lot of we're all kind of like, we're often in haste to jump into the how do we work with the nervous system, but actually until we actually feel the nervous system and feel the effects of working with the nervous system. So I have one client who I used to work one-on-one with. I still work one-on-one with, but when we in our early days of working, and that's why I said used to, in our early days of working, she used to come to me every week. She'd say, it's really weird. It's like being on drugs with you, right? She's like, I can't, it's like this sort of feeling. Anyway, she's like quite happy about that, right? She's like, no, I just feel really relaxed and like there's not a care in the world and da-da-da. And so what I was doing was building her capacity to hold her experience by holding a little bit of it myself for her, right? And through my holding a little bit of itself for her, her nervous system got to learn how to do it herself, but to not have to hold everything all at the same time, because that's why we get stressed and burdened, is because we're actually holding too much. So we want somebody to actually hold a bit of it, and it depends on how much we're holding and how much I need to hold. And then that person gets to start to play with, the client starts to get to play with, how does it feel to hold whatever they're left with, right? So, at first I was holding a lot more of it. So for her, it felt like she was on drugs because, wow, life's not so hard anymore, right? And then over time, she actually noticed the change. She actually noticed when the I'm on drugs feeling went away. And she's like, but I still feel really good. It's just I no longer feel like, that I'm anesthetized from some of my life, right, in a good way. Yeah. So this is the real, like, the exquisiteness of nervous system work, right? You can get to that real holding and sharing, and it's all about one container and two people inside it doing and sharing this the experience, the client's experience.
Yeah.
And me working out how much do I need to hold in this moment, and show their nervous system that I can hold all that, and it's not too much.
Yeah.
And that gets done on a nervous system level, and the client's nervous system picks that up. And you've heard of mirror neurons. It copies my nervous system, and it starts to use my nervous system as a model for how it might expand its own capacity.
So when I share my freaky shit with you and you don't freak out, my nervous system says, oh, it's not that freaky, it's not that crazy. Watch Raquel's nervous system. Okay, model that. It's okay. Everything's fine. That's kind of cool.
And so sometimes even not through, like, I want to say, Renee, it's not always even just about you sharing verbally your freaky shit with you. I actually tune in, feel somatically what's going on in your body. I can feel when your body's a little tense, for example. Right? Yeah. Totally. So when I feel that, my response is to just let go in myself a little bit more. So I don't have to say anything. I don't have to coach you. I don't have to take you into meditation or anything else like that. I just go, oh yeah, there's a bit of tension there in the body. Maybe I can just relax my part.
She's working a voodoo on me right now because she fucking is. I tell you what, because while she's been saying that last little bit, I've taken 3 deep breaths and calmed the fuck down.
Yeah, I couldn't help myself.
I tell you, Raquel is a master. Like, I wasn't. Oh, so good. Too funny. Yeah. You are. Thank you.
So my job is to be really present, right?
Yes.
That's really my job, like totally present. No matter how much kind of fun or anything we have, my job like when I'm working is to really, really stay present to multiple layers of what's going on.
Mm.
Yeah. So that at any point I can go, oh, something's happening here. Oh, something's happening here.
Yes.
What do I need to do to help regulate the client's experience in a particular way?
Yeah, fantastic.
Based on our goals. I'm not manipulating.
No. Raquel has full permission. Let's just let me just full disclosure. Raquel has full permission to do whatever she's fucking doing to me with her voodoo doll. There's no voodoo doll, I promise.
And sometimes I'll do these kinds of interviews, and I don't do any of that, right? Like because that's not what I'm there for. I'm there to have a conversation. I'm not there to kind of like do something else. But what happens is that, as we work together over a longer time, so my nervous system and your nervous system have started to get to know each other better, right?
Yeah, we're like old
buddies. So then, we're kind of really best buddies now. So some of what happens in my body is like, oh, it's doing that. Oh, it's spotted Renee's tension. Oh, shit. Oh, yeah, it's just done it. Like... And that's what the beauty is, working over time with somebody rather than just a session here, a session there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We can't control that stuff. That's nervous system stuff. It's done on an automatic and autonomic level. We have no real control over it.
Yeah. And this is science, not woo-woo, right?
Yeah, it's totally science. I mean, this is your autonomic nervous system, which is the foundation of your stress response and how it works. And we've focused on the polyvagal theory, which is all scientifically documented by a guy called Stephen Porges. Amazing work that he has found out of what happens in the nervous system. Yeah, and in both expanded and blissful states, as well as stress states. And we have maps with which we can actually follow that on a nervous system level.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. Now, I'm curious to know, because I know a lot of people, who are transitioning from that one-on-one to one-to-many kind of scenario are wondering how to create a package around a one-to-many. So tell us, how is your group program structured? What are the kind of components of it?
Yeah, so what I do, what I found worked really well is, so I do an 8-week program.
Yep.
And I make sure that there's a 2-week integration period in between the first 4 weeks and the subsequent 4 weeks.
Nice.
So a lot of people, they'll put a break into a program, but they're not putting a break in to really give the nervous system a break. And so, we find that, like, I found like last time people were really ready to come back after 2 weeks. Yeah. And they felt the container the whole time. So the container of holding is still always there. The group is there, the Facebook group and all that stuff is still there. But we really mindfully take a pause without disconnecting. If we can still connect. But we're taking a pause to really, really allow the work that we've done in the first 4 weeks to actually drop in and work through our nervous system so that we can actually move on to the next part of the program.
Yeah.
Okay? That's why I built it in. The first 4 weeks is a lot more learning and, so teaching so they're 2-hour sessions. I must tell you why I do it in person, and I'll tell you that in a sec. So they're 2-hour sessions, and we over those 4 weeks, I do just progressively less teaching, and we do more of it's like a circle sharing. So we deepen into presence with each other and deepen into presence with ourselves and all that sort of stuff. So you're learning those sorts of skills, so that by the time, and we also do shadow work in that first 4 weeks. So we're also not only deepening, we're also throwing out or transforming what we don't need or don't wish to hold in a particular way. I actually do prefer to think of shadow as sort of unintegrated back into its home, is how I think of it. I don't think we actually need to get rid of our shadows at all. There's just some aspects that are still haven't found their way home.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then the last 4 weeks.
Okay, so I just want to, so what I'm hearing is you've got 2-hour sessions on Zoom, group sessions on Zoom.
Yeah.
And what are the, how many people do you limit it to?
I limit it up to 12 people.
Up to 12 people. So
yes.
Up to 12 people, 2 hours a week on Zoom.
Yes, on Zoom. And then I do a Facebook Live in the, before, like usually, so I usually do the Zoom on like a Thursday, and I'll do a Facebook Live with Q&As on the Tuesday. So that's just me answering questions that the group has an opportunity to talk about, or to actually post in the group, or they can post on things. But it's very structured. Like I go over, I say these are the questions, these are the things that we've taught last week. You can ask any questions on that. And these are the things that we've covered in the weeks before. Ask any questions on those. Like I give a full roundup of the thing and give the structure, and then we kind of go with whatever happens. But I'm really focused on giving learning in ways that's visual, oral, like covering all the bases.
Yes.
I cover it through videos, through essays, through various different ways to try and actually make sure that everybody can, access learning.
Yes.
And I don't set homework. So this is the other thing from a nervous system perspective. So this, I think, is really critical for courses and the way everybody is overwhelmed. Courses don't contain a homework. We do the work together.
Yeah.
Right? So what we know from a nervous system level, and this is why I also don't do pre-recorded courses, is that our nervous systems will copy each other, learn from each other. In each moment, they're constantly responding. So we can do a certain amount pre-recorded, but to actually build the nervous system's capacity to be flexible, to stretch and adapt and change. And I just got off the radio listening to a whole thing around emotional adaptability in the workplace and how essential that is to be able to have the skills for other forms of adaptability in the workplace. This is the same sort of thing. In real time, our nervous systems, adjust to each other. They don't do that to a recording on the same level because there's not that immediate feedback.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay? And so that's why so the Tuesdays, the Q&As, I let that be recorded. That's fine if you can't show up. But the 2 hours that that concentrated on, that's actually nervous system training.
Yeah.
If you show up, that would be like sending a proxy to go to your gym class for you, right? Sending your secretary or sending your brother or sending your daughter or sending somebody else to go and lift weights for you and expect to see changes in your own body.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so that's why I do that live.
Yes.
And then we really get a chance. It's like we could do it recorded, but it would be slower. I'm trying to get a massive amount of change in 8 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a good balance as well, because you kind of touched on this, that you can have some of the teaching parts can be in the recorded elements. And this is what I'm really keen on as well. Is like when you've created your signature system and you've extracted your educate model and that forms the basis of your modules, you can deliver that content in a recorded fashion. That's your kind of, if we refer back to an old model we know of university, your lectures can be recorded, but the tutorials, that is interactive and that
That's
needs to be live and present. And I think that's the balance that you've got there is you can have that recorded stuff where you're just teaching and that doesn't need to be interactive as long as you've presented it to enough times to know that what you're saying is landing. So, you know, once you've practiced it a few times and you've watched people's responses and you've seen where they go, what are you talking about? Or where they're going, yes, 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 nodding madly.
Right.
You need that feedback loop as a facilitator to know, yep, that's landing or it's not. And I need to explain that in another way. And so that stuff can be recorded and that helps to build the leverage. But I think if you take away too much of that presence, you do lose the quality of the program. And that's why we've got so many, you know, online courses out there that are shit and that people aren't finishing. And I love that you're building in, and, you know, with your knowledge of the nervous system, you know, you've got a way of understanding this as well, which, you know, I haven't considered before, that our nervous system needs, it is, because if we're dealing with something that's not comfortable, and as service providers, we're always dealing with something that's not comfortable because we're problem solvers. Whatever our business is as a service provider, our clients are in pain of some description and we're helping them come up with a solution. And if they're in pain, their nervous system is going to be contracted. And so it's better if we're with them through that process to help them expand. Because if we leave them on their own in their pain to work on it on their own, they're not going to achieve it as well as they will with us. That's what they're paying for, is to work through their shit with us.
Well, also, you know, like you came really close to touching on a thing that we know about learning, and this is what I apply really heavily in my sessions. We know that with the nervous system and the way that people learn is that they succeed first and they feel what it's like to succeed, right? We don't give anybody, you know, the hardest task first and say, try that, right? They come to a workshop, you give them the hardest thing to do first, that you've lost them, right? You ask a child, you know, try algebra before they've figured out, you know, how to count, exactly. They're going to hate mathematics for the rest of their life, right? Hate anything to do with numbers. So we actually have to allow, from a nervous system level, we want you to succeed often before you try. So it's not just a learning strategy. This is actually a nervous system strategy so that somebody will turn up to life because they've succeeded the last time round. It's not about saying failure is not an option. Of course, failure is an option. It's perfectly fine. But if we've also done things and we're like, oh, my nervous system is not afraid of that. It doesn't think when it looks at 1 + 2 that it's going to be eaten by a tiger, right? It will move on from that place.
Yeah.
Some people do, right? Some people have that fear around 1 + 2 because they had that. They were given too much at a time when, for whatever reason, they couldn't take on the numbers, whether it be, you know, a teacher, a classroom situation, or whatever it was. So numbers became a tiger that was going to eat them.
Yeah. 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 And, you know, I think about, for my clients, a lot of the pain that they're experiencing is the frustration of not being able to grow their businesses the way that they want to, or, you know, wanting to make that transition, or just being overwhelmed by how much stuff they know and trying to communicate that clearly. It's like, it's so caught up in all of the noise in their own brain that, left on their own, that's where, you know, they create some models and then you're like, that still looks like spaghetti.
Yeah. That's so true. That's exactly what happens, right? Because our nervous systems take the cue from another's nervous system that everything's okay, right? Yeah. Right? That's really at a really foundational level. It's like, oh no, everything's okay. Yeah. You're not freaking out. I just
had this realization that people are totally buying my confidence and certainty around organizing their brains.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course they do.
That's what I'm doing. Yes. And this my nervous system is like, oh, don't worry about your spaghetti mess. It's fine. I can fix that. That's like sleep.
There are actually statistics around why therapy works, right? And I'm going to use therapy in really, really loose terms, but I have been trained as a psychotherapist as one of my trainings. And, you know, I came across all these statistics while I was training as a psychotherapist. And we know that there are a number of different reasons why therapy works. and almost none of them are the modality, right? Just to say that the modality is not what makes therapy work, right? So the thing that makes therapy work, the main thing is what's called the working alliance between the therapist and the client, right? The therapeutic alliance, right? If that is the thing, the number top one is what makes therapy work. It's about 30% or something is around, it is around 30% is the therapeutic alliance, the working alliance. So you can think about that with your client, and the alliance that you have is in like how you work together. That's about 30% of why things succeed.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of other things of why things succeed. And one of them is that the client has confidence in the therapist having the right tools to help them. Okay?
Yep.
And the other thing that works is hope. Right? Just simple thing of like, I hope this person, I'm just going to put my faith and my hope in that person because they are confident that they can help me. I will join into that, and that comes under the category.
Wow, I'm just like hearing you say the three things that make it work. I won't say who this person is because I'll protect their privacy, but someone I know recently went to see a psychologist for, the 6 sessions you get through your Medicare thing. I think it's 10, but you have to get 6 first and then you have to go back and get the other 4. So he's done the first 6 and he doesn't want to go back and get the 4 because I don't think it's working. And part of what was going on was he basically just didn't trust and respect that this person had the skills to get him and because he's he's a very scientific person and a very analytical person. And so anything that she was saying, he was going, nah, that's bullshit. Nah, that's bullshit. That's like, he's all his filters were going, and he's like, I don't believe you can help me. So there's no hope that this person, and all those things that you said were missing from that relationship. Like he did not, it was not working, like she was suggesting to him things like, oh, you need to do some deep breathing and meditation. He's like, if she actually talked to me earlier on, she would know that I do all that stuff. Like the things she was saying to him, he was like, I do all that.
Yes, I recently had somebody wanting to lecture me on self-care and the interdependence of human beings. I was like, that's what I teach in shamanism.
Yeah. It's like, it's sorry, I just had a moment there where I was
it's absolutely true. And the thing is, like, there are 2 things that, firstly, we can say is that that's often sometimes why we refer and say, maybe there's somebody better for you. And it can be simply because their way of communicating how they can help might just not be able to reach.
Yeah, it was not a good fit. But then he was like, but I don't want to have to go back to the start and start from the explaining the beginning with all the brand new person.
It's better to go back to the start. So the other thing is, as a therapist, or even as a, as the person who's helping the client, we have to be incredibly flexible and adaptable.
Yeah.
So, that includes even kind of really playing a little bit with our IQ if we can, right? We've got to, there's so many things that we have to try and be flexible on in terms of course, there'll be people that, I tend to attract really quite intelligent clients, right? So that's where I fit really comfortably in that. But I've also worked with people who are, far more kind of that are less heady and more grounded. And I love, working at that level. Don't get me wrong. I love to be in the body. So, I have to change my approach away and move away from an intellectual approach. Right? Intellectualizing to actually help. Let's say it's kind of recruiting the client into the way we're going to work together.
Yeah.
So
it's like that meeting the client where they're at.
Exactly.
And meet them where they're at. Yep. Awesome. All right. I know we could talk forever and ever and ever because I love your stuff, but we're running out of time. So if people want to find out more about who you are and what you do, where can they go?
Yes. Embodiedpresencetraining.com is my website.
Beautiful. Embodiedpresencetraining.com.
Yes, and I'm also on Facebook as well.
Fabulous. And we'll make sure all the links are in the show notes so you can find Raquel really, really easily because she's so fantastic. Highly recommend.
Yes.
I am like the best case study for Raquel ever.
And I've just finished the house move, and I'm actually taking one-on-one clients again. So there are some.
Very exciting, very exciting. Actually, I would like to hear from you since you've created your signature system. What's happened for you? What's changed? What benefits have you got?
Well, I got some amazing feedback actually, because I used it in my webinar, my first ever webinar actually. Had enough confidence to deliver a webinar rather than to be a guest presenter, of which I've done quite a few times in masterclasses. But I actually did this for myself. I did my first webinar, and I got some feedback the other day from somebody who had also done your Authority Accelerator course, and she commented on how effortlessly and seamlessly I had woven in the models into the rest of my webinar and into the practical exercises are offered in the webinar. So I think I really played with creating a whole presentation in which I wove the models into my presentation. I didn't just present the models.
And that is the artistry, and I'm so glad that you talked about that, because that is absolutely true. Like, I give this structure of a script to give people the confidence of this is how you present it in order, but then there's the artistry. And once you've got enough certainty of that safe container, right, of that signature system, then you can play with it and flow with it, and
Yes, and it didn't. It's not that it took eons of practice for me to actually get that.
That was your first webinar, and you're already artist.
First webinar, and it was actually only the second time I'd used the models in a presentation, and it's like, boom, I can do this, and I just it totally turned into my presentation. Like, it wasn't me using these great models that you and I created together, which are great, but I made it so my own that it just like really had totally all my flavor.
Yeah. And that excites me, because now I know, hearing you say that you will continue to use your models, which is, that's what they're for, to be used.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. If you feel like it's my method, then you're not going to use it in your, like, the whole point of it is for it to be the cornerstone of your whole business. And so, you've got to make it your own. You've got to own it.
Yeah. The first time I used it, and I think it's probably also useful, the first time I used it, it didn't feel like mine, but I have to say, I did not rehearse it. I did not do anything, and it rolled off. I was genius. I was like, whoa, that was amazing what just came out of my mouth. Like, the flow in it, because we'd done the practicing on the day.
Yeah.
And I put the slides together for the presentation, everything else, but I didn't rehearse it.
Yeah.
And I felt confident enough in the forum that I was going to present that I was going to do a good job. But I was really surprised at how the script flowed. Yeah. Like, really amazingly. And I tweaked the script for my audience. It wasn't like a script I'd actually rehearsed. So even though I was aware of, like, this is not quite mine yet, the actual delivery was quite spectacular, right? Yeah. But the second time round, I'm like, oh, these are mine.
Yeah, yeah. And it gets even better. So that's like your first and second times. Like, you just get to this point where you totally own it. And it's,
yes.
I love it. Anyway, fabulous. Thank you so much for being on the show, Raquel. You are awesome. I love your work. We've been speaking to the fabulous Raquel Dubois. I'm Renee Hasseldine. This is Leveraged and Loving It. We'll talk to you next week.
For all the downloads and links mentioned in this episode, head to shareyourpassion.com.au.